Hey everybody, and welcome to the FTN Network Schatz and Tanier NFL podcast for Thursday, December 14th, 2023. I am Aaron Schatz from FTNFantasy.com/DVOA. He is Mike Tanier from TheMessenger.com, and we are here to talk about Week 15 in the National Football League. And you can ask us questions and make comments if you're watching this show live, which you can do on YouTube every Monday and Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, something else in Europe, whatever. It's an interesting week because whether or not you think this is a good week depends on how you sort of judge things. On one hand, my projections came out with 7 games where the projected line is within 3 points, including all 3 of the Saturday special games on NFL Network. Mm-hmm. So that suggests that we have a week of mostly close, interesting contests, not counting San Francisco versus Arizona. On the other hand, oh my God, the backup quarterbacks. So many backup quarterbacks. In fact, from what we can tell, the first 3 games, so Thursday night, Chargers Raiders, which we're not going to discuss. And then the first 2 of the Saturday games are all backup quarterbacks, although at this point, Gardner Minshew has been starting for most of the season. So it's not like that's different from Nick Mullins coming in and making his first start for the Vikings. But it's like, how much backup quarterback? Who wants to watch Easton Stick for crying out loud? So, so that's the sort of dichotomy of this week in the NFL.
Right. And that's it. I think we all have a total of only 6 or 7 games in week 15 in which both starting quarterbacks from opening day are going to be facing each other. 6 or 7, depending on Geno Smith's health. Likely 6 along the way. And there's 4 games, and you mentioned them, including like 3 back-to-back-to-back, Thursday, Saturday, where it's backup against backup.
Yeah. But we're going to discuss those games anyway.
Yes.
Because they're important for the playoff race, because there's a lot of interesting. I mean, the fact is these 6-7 and 7-6 teams are not likely Super Bowl contenders, but the whether they can get into the playoffs is interesting if you're interested in that kind of thing. And if you're a football fan and you're watching this or listening to this podcast, you're probably interested in that sort of thing. So let's start with Saturday's games. 1 p.m., the 7-6 Vikings at the 7-6 Bengals. The Vikings get in 84% of the time if they win and 60% if they lose. The Bengals get in 28% of the time if they win and 6% of the time if they lose. And given that both teams are 7-6, that is a pretty good description of the difference between the 2 conferences this year.
Yes.
The differences are not at the top of the conference, but in the middle of the conference. That there are just basically all the contenders in the NFC are 7-6, 6-7, and all the contenders in the AFC are 7-6.
And part of the residue of that is the Vikings are 6-3 in conference, so that when we start talking about tiebreakers, they've got these victories against the Saints, the Falcons, some of these other teams that could come up along the way. These are easier teams to beat than the teams the Bengals have had to beat. They have a poor record in the AFC, and they don't have a lot of these tiebreakers to bring to bear.
Now, my big thing over the last couple of weeks has been to not crown rookie quarterbacks who have a couple of good games, or not rookies, but backup quarterbacks who have, because the history is filled with backup quarterbacks, Bailey Zappi, Kyle Allen, etc., who come in and have a couple of good games and get everybody excited, and then they regress to what we expected in the first place. So Jake Browning, I think, has been really good, but right, how long does that last? And I do think, like, Minnesota loves to blitz. They're going to blitz him. And I keep mentioning this stat whenever we do a Vikings game, but it's fascinating to me. The Vikings defense is better when they don't blitz than when they do.
That's got to be the residue of
minus 18% DVOA when they don't blitz, plus 8.5% when they do. They blitz more than any other team in the league, but they're better when they don't.
That has to be the residue of something. And I'll say 2 things. By the way, their blitz rate is the highest, 47.5%. They blitz half the time. Okay, they don't get a lot of pressure, but I think one of the issues you're dealing with is a team that, besides Daniel Hunter, doesn't have a lot of pass rushers that are going to win 101, hence the need for a blitz. One thing I did notice, their blitzes, no matter what it looks like pre-snap or at the snap, they tend to be 5-man blitzes. They're not a big blitzing 6-7-man blitzing team. They do it occasionally. A lot of times what they're doing is creating that confusion up front, still rushing 5, but letting some of these guys drop back. I don't know how Jake Browning is going to handle that in his 3rd NFL start.
I believe this is his 3rd start. Yes. He played a lot in the first time that he played, but he came in the middle of the game. Mm-hmm. As far as the Vikings offense goes, here's a couple of stats that I pulled apart. The Bengals are dead last against tight ends in DVOA.
Okay.
So I love the TJ Hawkinson over 52.5 receiving yards prop.
Yeah, that's a high over, but of course.
Nick Mullins, depending on the tight end in his first start against a defense that's bad against tight ends.
And an offense that's full of rollout passes, 2 tight ends, and then they might get the second guy involved. I might have looked for a total catches over under on that one. Just in case.
I don't know what that is, but that's an interesting idea too.
That would be another way to look at that. But you should see a lot of Hawkinson, as you're right. Mullins will be relying on him.
I will note, however, that the Vikings, this is with multiple different quarterbacks, whatever. Right. They are 4.5% offense DVOA with 11 personnel, but minus 20% with 12 personnel. So putting 2 tight ends on the field doesn't really work for them that well.
However, putting no wide receivers on the field is a problem. I don't know what Justin Jefferson's
status. Justin Jefferson, I think is good to go.
Is he? I thought it might be a day-to-day situation. I think we'll be seeing him. But once you get to any kind of depth, Jordan Addison's a good player. KJ Osborne was awful.
He says he will play Saturday's chest injury. Says he will play Saturday versus Bengals.
Okay. You still never want to look at the wide receiver 3 for the Vikings to do anything.
The Vikings running game has really struggled this year, but so has the Bengals run defense.
Oh gosh, so there's nothing there to hang
And the Bengals have a real special teams advantage in this game, especially on field goals and Vikings punts.
Okay. They do have
this does seem like a game with a good amount of punting with Nick Mullins at quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings.
There'll be a lot of punting. And they have a good return game, and McPherson's a heck of a kicker.
So, the Vikings defense has been really improved, obviously, over the course of the year. They're now 6th. Minnesota defense is now 6th in the year for DVOA, and I think that Brian Flores is a coordinator of the year.
I think he is, him and Bobby Slowick.
Yeah, him and Bobby Slowick. Yeah,
Bobby
I guess
Slowick would be my choice. Yep. If you pick offense and defense, Flores is my defense choice.
Yeah. What is your feeling about this game in general? The line is Bengals -3 at home.
I hate laying a field goal on that team. Maybe Tuesday at the 2-5. Like the Bengals, I like at home. Normally, I'm Mr. Backup quarterback, but this is quarterback number 1, 2, 3, 4, I believe. And while he has been with the team for a while, I'm not a Nick Mullins believer at this point. So
yeah, I think if I had to bet, I would bet the Vikings just because this game feels like such a, you might as well take the team with the +3.
Yeah. And it's the Vikings, and it's always a field goal difference in the game.
I realize for people who are listening to the podcast, they don't know that I just threw up my hands in I have no idea motion, but
right.
I would stay away from this game, I think, from a betting perspective, except for the Hawkinson over, and you get your choice. Mike likes the receptions over. I like the yardage over.
Yeah. It's a good game for props, not necessarily final score.
Yeah. All right, let's go to 4:30 on Saturday. The Pittsburgh Steelers at 7-6 at the Indianapolis Colts, who are also 7-6. This is the most important game of the week for playoff odds.
I believe you, but oh my God.
Steelers, 51% of the time, they make the playoffs if they win. 7% if they lose. There must be some kind of a tiebreaker thing in there where their AFC record gets tanked.
Well, and part of it is the Colts get the win and the tiebreaker, and the Colts go to 8-6.
Would go to 8-6.
Yeah.
The Colts, 67% of the time they make the playoffs with a win, 22% with a loss.
Wow. And
so that's like 45% leeway either way for both teams.
That's huge. And the Steelers have a loss to the Texans, which is a bad for tiebreakers. They have a loss to the split with the Browns, which is a rough for tiebreakers. So as they put a Colts loss in there, a lot of these scenarios don't go the Steelers' way. Yeah.
So here is my interesting stat I've discovered from looking through the personnel things.
Okay.
Colts.
Okay.
With 11 personnel, 5.7 yards per play.
All right.
With 12 personnel, 3.5. And the Steelers are a better defense in base than in nickel.
Okay.
So don't use the 12 personnel.
Spread the field a little bit.
Now let's do the other side. The Steelers in 11 personnel, 5.3 yards per play.
Okay.
In 12 personnel, 4.3 yards per play.
Okay.
And the Colts are better in base defense than in nickel. So Steelers, don't use 12 personnel, use 11. For both teams, it looks much better if they spread the field out, go with 3 wide receivers, get the other team to put 5 defensive backs. That favors both offenses, and it goes against both defenses. So that is my strategy for this game for both teams.
Here's my strategy. You know the Steelers lead the league in broken tackles on running plays?
On defense or offense?
No, they're running backs.
Oh, wow, okay.
Najee Harris, the great immortal Najee.
A lot of it is Jaylen Warren, though. I mean, Jaylen Warren, right?
Jaylen Warren is 4th in broken tackles as per Sports Info Solutions. Najee Harris is 2nd to Christian McCaffrey on running plays in broken tackles.
Wow.
Warren has a higher rate because he has fewer carries, etc. But both of them have been effective. About the only thing that's been effective for the Steelers has been.
What's really funny is I was writing an ESPN piece about problems for the various bubble teams.
Okay.
And I thought I would write about the Colts run defense, which is 26th in DVOA. But it's not actually that bad.
Okay.
Here's the thing about the Colts run defense. They don't force fumbles. That's why they're so bad in DVOA. On yards per play allowed, they're actually average.
Okay.
Which is still not as good as you would expect a team with DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart to be.
Right.
And they're worse up the middle than they are anywhere else, which is not where you would expect a team with DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart and Zaire Franklin to be.
Right.
But the funny thing is that it's that they just haven't forced any turnovers, which is there's a little bit of randomness in there, although forcing fumbles is a skill as opposed to jumping on them.
Right.
But I guess if you kind of combine that idea of the up the middle runs with the Steelers breaking a lot of tackles, you get the idea that the Steelers should be running up the middle a lot in this game.
Yeah, and you can spread the field and run up the middle. I don't know if the Steelers...
Oh, yeah, that's what I do in Madden all the time.
Exactly, that's what we all do in Madden. I don't know if the Steelers coordinators have reached the Madden stage of football comprehension, but that's on table as a strategy.
The line is Colts minus 1.5. It moved a point this morning. It was Colts minus 2.5 before, and now it's Colts minus 1.5. I think I would go Steelers money line if I needed to bet on this game, but it's another one where it's pretty close.
Yeah, Steelers money line would be plus 110. I like that. If you look personnel top to bottom of these teams, you're like, this should be the Steelers. It should be the Steelers in terms
because TJ Watt and Highsmith and Minka Fitzpatrick and
Right. And on paper, they're skill position players who have done nothing this year. And even if you say Allen Robinson's toast, it's like Pickens and Deontay Johnson and Warren and Freiermuth, they should be doing more. So I'm kind of going with that and the on paper and going to go with the Steelers.
Yeah. Reminder, by the way, that if you are watching us live, please give us your questions and your comments.
Yes.
We will react, talk about Week 15 games. Let's get to Saturday night, which is all right for fighting for the Denver Broncos at 7-6 and the Lions at 9-4. Quickly, Andrew Daly says, why take the money line when the extra point or two of protection pays out nearly the same? I think the answer is because the likelihood of a 1 or 2 point win as opposed to 3 is low enough that you're like, I might as well get plus 110 rather than minus 110. I think.
Yeah, I usually, it's around plus 130, plus 140. It's more enticing, but sometimes it's a go with the gut thing. Like I don't expect this to be like, oh, they lost by 1 point. I'm not expecting that to be the outcome in this personally.
So the Broncos and the Lions. Lions are basically in. Broncos make it 72% of the time with a win, 37% of the time with a loss. And of course, these defenses are going in completely opposite directions. The Lions defense has really been struggling in the last few weeks. The Broncos defense has been fantastic in the last few weeks. So that makes this a really interesting. And I also think this is an interesting game for the Coach of the Year award.
Okay.
Because Sean Payton has definitely risen as a candidate for Coach of the Year as the Denver Broncos keep winning games. And we know Dan Campbell is a leading candidate. Mm-hmm. And if Campbell, wins this game, they're 10-4. But if he loses this game, it's something like 3 straight losses, and then his candidacy is not as good. And meanwhile, the Broncos are on the road to going 10-7 or something. So then maybe Peyton's candidate is candidacy is good.
So right now, by the way, the odds: Campbell plus 200, D'Amico, Ryan's plus 300, McDaniel plus 450. He ain't going to win. Stakem at plus 750. I don't think he's going to win. Kyle Shanahan at plus 900. He's not going to win because the way the voting usually goes. Peyton's at plus 950. If D'Amico Ryans are not on the list here, gets a win with Davis Mills at quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
I don't hear any other names for the rest of this year. That's over. Okay. But
Super Glucose asks, Jared Goff is also falling to earth. I don't know. I have to look at the numbers a little bit to see whether he's faltered in recent. I think he's faltered in recent weeks, but not as much as the defense. So if we look at the trends numbers, yes, the Detroit passing attack in weeks 1 to 9 was 7th.
Okay.
In weeks 10 to 14, it is 18th.
Yeah. And very
meanwhile, the Detroit pass defense in weeks 1 to 9 was 8th.
Nice.
The Detroit pass defense in weeks 10 to 14 is 31st.
Wow. Oh my gosh. And here's a trend I want to ask you about. Is this going to stick? It sounds like one that's going to turn around as one that's probably on a lot of people's minds. Broncos defense, last 6 games, 17 takeaways. Lions offense, last 4 games, 10 giveaways. So one team has been, and it's very fumble heavy if you look at it too. Both sides, there's a lot of fumbles. Is this a trend or is this something that is going to be?
That sounds a little bit more, I mean, fumbles just seem more iffy than interceptions. They just do.
And especially because it's not strip sack fumbles a lot of times. It's like, because strip sack fumbles, like, okay, your vicious pass rush is doing it. It's more like guys dropping balls.
Goff, as you probably would guess, is better without a blitz.
Of course.
Right? Because, of course, he's Goff, and when he's off schedule, things go haywire.
Yeah.
The Broncos defense, since week 6, so there's only the good Broncos defense, minus 6% DVOA without a blitz, but minus 26% with a blitz.
Okay.
And the yards per pass allowed go from 6.6 without a blitz to 4.1 with a blitz. So come after Jared Goff.
I think they will.
The Broncos are a better running team on offense, but the Lions are a better defense against the run.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
My other split here, the Broncos are 30th against tight ends.
Okay.
24th if you only count since week 6. So this is still a problem, even as everything has been solved on defense. So Sam Laporta over 46.5 yards.
I like that. They feed him the ball a lot. It's a little less juicy than the Hawkinson one, which is up, like another catch up from that. I like that prop. This feels like a kind of game where it's going to be turtle ball by the Broncos, where they're just going to be trying ball control, play for field goals, play for field position, and hoping to get some turnovers from the Lions. That's the way I see this one playing out.
I mean, this is one of those games where it feels like the way that the trends are, it should be the Broncos.
Yeah.
And then what happens is that a game like that comes out and goes completely opposite of the trends.
Right.
And the longer term wins out. The line is Lions -4. So I think I definitely would go Broncos +4.
Yes. But straight up, I like the Lions better.
Yeah. But if you're getting 4 points,
give
me the Broncos.
It's in a game where it could be very field goal heavy. Or it could be like a tight game.
All right, let's move on to Sunday's games. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, current leaders of the NFC South at 6-7, and the Green Bay Packers, who are currently in a playoff spot at 6-7, are playing at 1:00. This is the most important 1:00 game. The Buccaneers make the playoffs 78% of the time if they win, and 38%.
Wait. Say that again.
The Buccaneers make the playoffs 78% of the time if they win this game.
Oh, my God.
Every win matters with these 6-7 and 7-6 teams.
I'm having a stroke. I smell toast.
Packers make the playoffs 63% of the time with a win, 20% of the time with a loss. Now, one of the things I've written about a few times this year is Jordan Love struggling with the blitz this year. But then here's something interesting. Against the Giants last week, despite losing the game, he was very good against the blitz. It reversed the trend from the season. In fact, that last touchdown to Malik Heath, that nearly won the game was against the blitz. So We know Tampa Bay blitzes a lot. They're like third or fifth or something in blitz percentage. Not as high as Minnesota, but pretty high.
They're up there. They're up there.
So I'm interested to see what Jordan Love does against the blitz in this game.
I think he is finding hots and getting rid of the ball quicker in those situations, which wasn't the case early in the year. On the injury report side, we have this long, groaning injury report for the Green Bay Packers. I know we've been waiting for Jair Alexander for weeks and weeks. He doesn't look like he's in good situation right now. Reed escaped concussion protocol, but he's having health situations. Darnell Savage is on the injury report again for the Packers. There's a lot of things to worry about on the Packers side of the ball about who's available and who's going to be out there for them. Quay Walker, their linebacker, who runs very hot and cold, but he's their starting linebacker, and sometimes he generates big plays. He's on the injury list. I think his status is pretty cloudy for this week.
I will note the Packers have been bad running the ball this year.
Mm-hmm.
But the Tampa Bay run defense is average. It's not as good as it's been in past years. I think Vita Vea has had some injuries.
He has a toe injury. He's been playing through it, I believe.
Yeah.
Buccaneers offense, 13 turnovers. That's like tied for seventh best in the NFL. Very low turnover offense, and that's helped them. And it's helped them in that Bucs opponents start their average drive on the 26.6 yard line. They start their average drive with very bad field position. Only the Niners and I believe the Raiders, for some reason, have better starting field position by their opponents. And this is how the Buccaneers are beating these junky teams in that division.
Have worse starting field position.
Worse starting field position. That's why, yes. So
that's the A.J. Cole effect for the Raiders.
A.J. Cole effect. Jake Camarda is a heck of a punter for the Buccaneers, but it's also low turnover football. Low turnover football means you can play punt and pin better. And when you're playing the Panthers, and that actually was visible last week, playing the Panthers, they're not going to get 4 or 5 first downs against you. Right. You know, the Saints probably aren't either. And that's how you can muck out wins with the Buccaneers.
Line is Packers -3.5.
I don't care. I hate this. I hate it here. I hate that we have.
Yeah, I mean, my first instinct is I just can't believe in the Bucs, and I go Packers. But then the Packers lost to the Giants last week, so
right,
yeah.
And it wasn't, and it's just in a sloppy, messy, like we're equal of the Giants kind of way they lost. I hate the game. I hate the fact that there are only 9 or 10 starting quarterback versus starting quarterback matchups, and one of them is Ritter versus Young, and then the other one is Jordan Love versus Baker Mayfield at this point. I don't like it. I hate it.
Here is a starting quarterback versus starting quarterback.
Oh, here we go. Thank you.
4 p.m. The 10-3 Cowboys at the 7-6 Bills.
Yeah.
So Cowboys are in, basically, they make the Super Bowl 19% of the time if they win, 15% if they lose. Bills make the playoffs 52% of the time with a win, 19% of the time with a lose. This game matters more to the Bills than it does to the Cowboys, frankly.
By far, but the Cowboys still have a chance.
They still have a chance at the number 1 seed. They still have a chance at the division. Yep.
Division, yeah, those are big deals, yeah.
The Cowboys defense is 19th against deep passes. And number 1 against shorter passes. But Josh Allen is actually below average this year throwing deep. And by that, what I mean is his receivers are below average this year running routes deep.
Right. Because
let's be honest, what do you trust throwing deep? Josh Allen's arm or Josh Allen's receivers? You trust Josh Allen's arm.
I don't always trust his decision making either, but I don't trust most of those receivers. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Dak is second in the NFL in DVOA on deep throws. You'll never believe who's first. Either that or you will completely believe who's first.
It's not Love, is it?
It's Brock Purdy.
Oh, I believe it.
Deep passes.
I believe it.
16 or more air yards.
Yes.
The Bills against deep passes on defense this year, 29th.
Missing those guys in the secondary.
Throw it, Dak, baby.
Wow.
Throw it deep.
I'm a Bills fan this week, so I have to turn around and be like, oh yeah, I believe in these guys.
Yeah. And the Cowboys clearly get better the more receivers they have on the field. This is interesting. Cowboys DVOA with 1 wide receiver -32%. With 2 wide receivers +9. With 3 wide receivers +19. With 4 wide receivers +56.
Wow.
I mean, that's small sample size with 1 and small sample size with 4, but still, like, I think that's kind of fun.
That's fun. I think a lot of that is when they get into these 3 and 4 receiver packages. That's where they get creative about where Lamb is, and it's almost like you're not doing this because Gallup is playing super well. You're doing this because it gives you better opportunities to get the ball to Lamb.
So one other thing, the system likes the under in this game. I think the number is like 50 something, 51 or something.
Oh wow!
But both of the Cowboys and Bills defenses this year get much weaker in the red zone. The Cowboys are the number 27 defense in the red zone, and the Bills are 25th.
Somebody need to tell the Eagles that the Cowboys defense was 27th.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, with that wasn't the Cowboys defense. That was some own goals, so to speak. By the way, for the season, Buffalo games are 4-9 against the over-under. Buffalo games have been going under a lot. Cowboys games are 8-5. Doesn't give you a really good.
Well, because the Cowboys offense is just the second half of the season. The Cowboys offense has been super. So the over-unders for the Cowboys were based on what their offense was doing in the first half of the season. And then the second half of the season came along and they're playing much better.
Yeah, I'm not sure I trust an over this high in this game.
Andrew Daly wants to know if the model has the red zone deficiencies built in. Not yet. Not yet. My over-under model does not yet account for red zone DVOA. It's something I need to work on in the offseason, actually.
Wow, absolutely.
So the line is Bills minus 2.5.
I don't trust the Bills to lay points. I don't trust.
Yeah, I feel like Cowboys plus 2.5. And I don't know what the money line is, but maybe Cowboys money line. Although given the way the Bills have gone, this is one where you might want the 2 points.
Yeah, I can see it. By the way, the Cowboys money line would be only plus 105. So yeah, take those 2
Yeah,
points.
you take the points.
That's what we were saying earlier. Yeah.
I'm surprised. I mean, I realize that, advanced metrics love the Bills, but they love the Cowboys too. Yeah. So I'm a little surprised that the line is not more even, although part of it is the road. Scott Spratt wrote today at the FTN Fantasy DVOA page about Dak Prescott is much, much better at home than on the road, not just this year, but for his whole career, which normally my feeling is those 1 year home road splits are nonsense. They're just random chance. The fact that he's been better at home than on the road for his whole career means a little bit more to me.
I agree. And of course it is Big D. You are talking about pretty much a dome stadium.
And it's 45 degrees, I think, but rain and wind, I think is the it's not cold this week.
Then we're going under.
So then you're thinking under.
Then we're going under. Yeah. Check forecast and then decide.
And we both like Cowboys plus 2.5.
Yes.
All right. Andrew Daly says it's the dome plus playing in cold weather against NFC East opponents that might be the difference for Prescott between home and road. Possibly that's certainly some of it, but other he has a bigger and more consistent difference than other dome quarterbacks have.
Right. But it can be different when you're playing in, say, the NFC South, where your road games are in Charlotte, where the weather's nice.
Right. And if you're from Atlanta, your road games are in New Orleans, which is a dome. And if you're in New Orleans, your road games are in Atlanta, which is a dome.
Right. Or you're going to Tampa again, where the weather's good, where there's a couple of games a year of Dak up here on the I-95 corridor, where I've got my space heater on behind me here in the office.
Right. And but again, this is not a 30-degree game. This is supposed to be like 45 or something. So in Buffalo, although 45 during the day, if it's a 4 p.m. game, it's really a night game. So it's going to get lower. Ravens 10-3 at Jaguars 8-5. The most important game for the Super Bowl. Because our numbers love the Ravens so much that if they win this game, their odds of making the Super Bowl go to over 50%.
Wow. Over 50%.
Yeah, because their DVOA is so high and because their chances of the number 1 seed would be so high with another AFC win. And Jaguars make the playoffs 99% if they win this game, 84% if they lose this game.
Wow. Remarkable.
The Lamar Jackson has struggled against the blitz this year, but then he's had other years where he's been really good against the blitz. The Jaguars defense is much better when it does not blitz.
Okay. Interesting.
And this is a weird one that I have no explanation for and might just be random chance.
Okay.
Lamar Jackson is much better this year throwing to the left than to the right.
I have no idea.
And the Jaguars defense is much better against throws on the right than against throws on the left. And I don't think that that's related to a specific cornerback.
I don't know if it's related to a corner. Zay Flowers, I think, is on the left a lot, running his little
that would make sense.
Wiggly waggly plays. I think that they're always on the left. I will not be able to look that up at this moment, but that's fascinating.
I mean, the thing about this game is we talked about Lawrence last week, that he was moving around fine, but everything else, he didn't seem as good as usual. And you know, my numbers love the Ravens so much. It's just really hard to get away from the Ravens.
Right.
Ravens versus a hobbled Lawrence. And also, I said all year, like the Jacksonville defense was shockingly good. I had a feeling it couldn't last. The last 2 weeks, it hasn't been that good,
Yes.
which means it's not lasting. Now the Ravens offense is going to go out there and run all over them. Like, I'm feeling the line is Ravens -3, and I'm feeling Ravens in this game.
I'm feeling Ravens too. By the way, one thought in terms of the Lawrence situation: missing Christian Kirk. Okay.
Yes.
Passes of 10+ air yards, so down the field a little bit. Christian Kirk's catch rate was 53.1%, 53.1. Zay Jones's was down at 22.7. So there's a big difference. You having Christian Kirk intermediate route, Zay Jones intermediate route. I think we saw that a lot last week. I think that's going to be a problem that persists with Jaguars offense. So, yeah, like you, I'm thinking Ravens.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty Ravens on the Sunday night game, but weird things happen to the Ravens,
and to the Jaguars.
And to the Jaguars.
Yes.
All right, that does it for our show for December 14th, our Week 15 preview. Thank you so much to everybody watching live. Thank you to everybody listening on the podcast afterwards. You know, like we say every week, please rate and review the show. Please tell your friends all about the show. Spread the word about the show. Bernie Miklosh was really nice enough to talk about the show on his radio. I was on the radio with him in St. Louis, and he talked about listening to the show. That was pretty cool.
I love him. He's awesome.
Spread the word and get us more viewers and listeners. And we will be back on Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern to review all of these games and preview the Philadelphia Eagles and the Seattle Seahawks in the first ever flexed Monday night game.
That's right.
That's right. You are not watching Bailey Zappi.
Thank
you may be watching Drew Lock instead, but you are not watching Bailey Zappi. All right. That does it for today's show. He's Mike Tanier. I'm Aaron Schatz. Have a great weekend, y'all. Enjoy the games. We'll see you next week. So long.